All right, everybody knows that half of shooting good is just looking cool while you're doing it. Now you may be rocking the latest Cry Precision style, but if your rifle's not rocking something equally cool, you're just not gonna be that effective on the range. Now personally, I like my camo jobs to look like some kind of 1980s post-apocalyptic reject paint scheme. That's just me. If it doesn't look like something a bunch of teenagers will be running around with after hack jobbing it from the local Ace hardware store after a 1980s style communist invasion, I don't want it. Welcome back to the shop today. Thank you for joining me again. It is always super cool if you could get your rifle Cerakoted, and there's all kinds of cool paint schemes out there you can do with Cerakote and all that stuff. If you get it from the factory like that, or pre-baked, you know, kind of baked in custom camo from the factories and stuff like that, or even custom rifles. That's super cool, but it can be really, really expensive. So over the years, I've painted most rifles that I've either sent out to customers or had personally on my own, just because I'm a nerd like that and I like the way it looks. And it actually serves a functional purpose in kind of breaking up your silhouette and outline if you're out in the woods hunting and stuff like that. It can be highly practical. I won't say it's 100% necessary to paint your rifle, but it can be super practical. And it's a lot of fun anyway. It's like an art project for adults. So some of the easiest methods I've found so far as paint goes for getting a rifle painted for corrosion resistance, for one, to help with breaking up the outline, camouflaging the actual rifle itself, blending in with your environment and just making it look cooler, are either using something like Brownell's Alumahide, which is a spray-based epoxy, a spray can, rattle can epoxy, which you can use, that is pretty easily available from brownells.com, or you can just go with the local hardware store stuff, the camouflage paint from the local hardware store, and go the cheap route. I use a combination of both. I like the Brownell's Alumahide. This is their Alumahide 2. I like this as a base coat for most of my rifles for the exposed parts, because it's an epoxy coating that you don't have to bake on. So like Cerakote and stuff like that, you gotta bake it on and all that good stuff. But the Brownell's Alumahide, you don't have to bake it on. You just have to wait a long time in between coats, like in between, you know, your base coats versus your pattern coats and stuff like that. So it takes a long time to cure, multiple days of curing to do. You can bake it. You can take smaller parts and some things that are, you know, heat resistant parts of the rifle and stuff like that, and you can bake them at 195 degrees for like 3 hours, and then you cure that coat much faster. So you can do it in a couple hours if you have a big enough oven and it's a small enough part, and you can do it in your, actually you could do it in your kitchen oven, which I have done before. So that's an option. You can either do the long-term waiting route for bigger parts, plastic parts, or non-heat resistant parts like scopes and stuff like that. You're just gonna wanna spray them, let them sit, forget about it for a couple days, and then come back and do your pattern coats and stuff like that. That's one route you can go with Brownells, and then that's what I usually do with my base coat. And on top of that is where I'll blend sometimes this and sometimes this to do my pattern coats. So let's talk about specifically what that looks like. For most camo patterns, the base coat is like just your flat color. And it needs to be the flat color that most closely represents your environment. Some of the best colors for this are just using flat dark earth, or earth brown from Brownells, or OD green. Those are kind of the three colors I use the most as just the base flat out coat. You don't want to go too dark, okay? So that's kind of the problem with a lot of camo schemes, is they're way too dark. And they stick out like a sore thumb in most environments. So you want to think on the lighter side. Pick a lighter color, the lighter for your environment, and use that as your base flat coat for the whole thing. Get that done, let it cure, however you're going to do it, whether you're baking or curing. And then you're going to start working in larger patterns of color. And the larger patterns of color are like your big stripes. And this is just how I do it. I do big stripes. I do base coat, and then I'll put a secondary coat of big stripes, and it's a contrasting color to the base coat. It may not be super contrasting, but it's a different color and a different value at least. So I have kind of a darker and a lighter main value scheme for the rifle and optic overall. You can kind of see that here where I've got OD green and I've got flat dark earth. Now the stock itself, this is a Macmillan A5 stock. It came in the dark OD green, so I striped it with a couple of flat dark earth large patterns, and I actually used this netting, which is, this is actually a really great cheat for just breaking up the pattern, breaking up your overall shapes and stuff like that. You can fold this multiple layers on top of itself. This is just a cami netting I got from the local army surplus store. Use it to make ghillie suits and stuff like that. You just drape it over, and then you can do the big stripes, your big swaths of lighter color contrasting with my darker base, with this, and it kind of provides you that lightness. It provides you that bigger change in the value scale. It provides you that contrasting change in the value scale, but it's also broken up a little bit, so it's not just big flat dark or big flat light swaths of color. So it's kind of broken up. You can see in the actual camo pattern there with the netting. All right, so after I've done that, what I'll do is I'll actually make myself some patterns. Depending on the style I'm going for, the look I'm going for, I'll take, you know, regular craft paper, sketchbook paper, whatever, and cut out randomized patterns to create the effect for the actual detail painting that I'm going to do after the base coat and the main contrasting coat. Now, of course, it's important to remember before you do any of this to clean up the rifle really well, clean up all the parts really well. Lacquer thinner, stuff like that works really well for cleaning parts and stuff. Remove everything that doesn't need to be painted on the rifle. Like I pull my bolt out and I'll stuff the bore and paint and cover the interior of the chamber so no paint gets in there. I also put some, you know, like pipe cleaners or whatever to put them in the different holes and stuff on the receiver. I will plug the barrel with something and wrap the end of it. If I'm gonna keep the muzzle brake from getting colored, I'll wrap that. Usually the actual bottom metal, I don't ever paint the trigger, and I don't want any paint getting up here in the housing of the trigger housing and stuff like that, because there's a lot of mechanisms and stuff in there you don't want paint on. So I'll tape that whole thing off using some blue painter's tape. This is another, you know, really the only other tool you need other than some rubber gloves and a mask for in a well-ventilated area or whatever. So tape off the things you don't want colored, pull the parts off you don't want colored as well. Get yourself in an area you can set up to do this. Get your base coat on, clean everything up, degrease it, get your base coat on. You can sandblast if you have it available. It does work well to sandblast, especially on metal parts. They hold the paint much nicer. But if you clean everything really well and you put some Brownell's aluminide down as just your base coat, at the very least, a thin coat of it, it provides kind of a what you call primer effect. Especially if you just put it down and let it cure, don't touch it for a few days or bake it, whatever you're gonna do. And it gives you that primer effect, so you've laid down a base coat of primer, which is a really good shell to, or canvas to then paint on top of with your patterns and stuff like that. Once I've got the base coat laid down, I've got all of it, you know, cleaned up, taped up, base coat's laid down, and my main contrasting coats and stripes are laid down. Then I will start working in my patterns, and I usually go with a really light pattern, light color. Like here on this rifle, I did sand because of the environment I'm in. I'm in the high Sierras, the high desert, so there is a lot of green, but there's a lot of earth tones, and there's also some sandy colors too. There's some lighter colors. It's not pure desert, okay? So I don't actually live down in the valley or anything like that in the pure desert area, and this rifle I'm not gonna be probably hunting with down there as much. So I don't need something completely sand colored, completely khaki colored. But a lot of that's gonna be dependent on your actual environment, where you're at, what kind of paint scheme you lay down. I go outside and look around, look at the rocks, man. Look at the, you know, the flora and the fauna, and you can honestly grab pieces of the flora and fauna, the leaves and the branches and stuff like that, to use as pattern overlays for actually spraying your colors down. And there's multiple ways to do that. So my personal preference is I kind of like that chocolate chip cookie cutter effect you would get from woodland camo or the multicam, which is like, multicam is, to me, is one of those most real versatile camouflages. And if you don't want to cover your entire rifle with something like this, you know, Gear Aid camouflage tape, multicam is the kind of the paint scheme-ish that I go for the most, and it has light olive in it, dark olive in it, khaki in it, OD green in it, and a dark brown in it. So you got like 5 different colors, and a light brown as well. So you've got like 5 different colors to pick from there, and there's like 5 different colors you can use in a scheme, and it can get a little busy or a little, you know, complicated trying to find all 5 of those colors in the paint you want. So you don't have to go that far with it, but I do try to emulate multicam in most of what I do. A lot of that is just in the patterning. So this is my main pattern for my lighter colors. So I've got my base coat, I've got my, you know, main secondary swath coat down, and now I'm gonna pick a lighter, even lighter color. In this case, I picked sand or flat sand from the local hardware store, and started laying down this big pattern in randomized ways across the rifle and around it. And then I do my highlights. The very last, one of the last steps or two for me, and last colors I do is actually the darker colors. Personally, I wouldn't go full straight black for large parts of the pattern because there's not a lot of straight flat black in nature. So I go with like a dark brown, which this is flat earth brown. Brownell's actually has an earth brown as well, this one, but it's not quite as dark as some of the stuff I found here. So this camouflage Rust-Oleum stuff is actually pretty good for getting very close to black, but not going all the way there. And then you start laying small chunks of black and small little highlights, the shadow highlights, pops of black across the pattern in a randomized way, and it breaks up the overall silhouette of everything. Also adds that kind of shadowy texture too. If you look in the shadows and trees and stuff like that, there's kind of a speckled nature to the shadows and highlights. So that's what you're going for, an overall look of a camouflage job. Regardless of the rifle, regardless of the environment, you're trying to blend in with the natural environment around by breaking up the outline, the silhouette, and the really obvious parts of a rifle in nature. From the barrel, which is a straight stick, which there's not a whole lot of straight silver sticks in nature, okay? So break that up. The stock itself kind of has a more organic flow to it, or organic look to it, but still, if you paint it right, you can make it look like a chunk of wood, which is really cool. So there's a lot of options out there, a lot of ways to do this. The tools are simple, the tips are simple, the techniques are simple. You've seen 1,000 people on YouTube painting their rifles. I think it's just a really cool, fun project you can have or do with your rifles, just to make them look cooler, honestly, and make it, actually functionally blend in with your environment more. Some people think it's sacrilegious to paint a rifle, or they wouldn't do anything but Cerakote. All I'm gonna say is, before Cerakote came along, most of us were painting our rifles in the 80s with just rattle can spray paint from the auto parts store, which is another good thing you can use. Is auto part stores have epoxy or enamel based flat paints. They use in engine parts sometimes, so you can find some colors there, not many, but you can find some of your darker colors there, and those work really well. The biggest takeaway from this, if you want to be cool, paint your rifle, because it just looks cooler and you will shoot way better, and that is a guaranteed scientific fact. We've all known it since the 1980s, and we watched Sniper. Was it the 90s? I think it was in the 90s. When did Sniper come out? That old movie with what's his name in it? Such a cool movie. Paint your rifles, okay? Don't be lame. Paint your rifles. Boom, boom, boom. This is the process. Base coat, contrasting stripes and swaths, texture coats, pattern coats, whatever you're gonna do coats. Go nuts, have fun. I've done all kinds of stuff. Like this one, I use tape to make little, little different patches and swatches and whatnot and patterns and stuff like that. You can do that too. You can tape up. You can actually cut little pieces of tape out of this and tape up actual patterns that look like woodland camo, and just do it in layers. Start with the dark layers and then work your way to light, and then go another dark layer, or a speckled layer on top of that. There's all kinds of crap you can do, man. Have fun with it. This is fun. This is good stuff. This is good times. Y'all stay sharp. Be blessed.